All right, folks, we'll go ahead and call this September 10th regular city commission meeting to order. I have one change on the agenda, and that is item B on the consent agenda. We're going to pull that off, and we will put it on to the next time the Board of Adjustment meeting meets, and the Board of Adjustment will vote on those meeting minutes. With that being said, could I have... Okay, Commissioner Martin. You have a question on the agenda? Question on the invoice. So we will pull the invoices off of the consent agenda, and we will move those to... Take me a minute to flip through all the legislative to item E on agenda items. Does that sound good? Anybody else have any questions, comments, changes to the agenda? Okay. Hearing none, does the public have any questions or comments on the agenda with the changes that we have identified? Okay. Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved with the changes.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin, a second from Commissioner Coleman. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passed unanimously. I'd like to recognize the absence of Commissioner Farnsworth. He is sick and ill, so our thoughts and prayers will be with him as he works through and gets better and gets back to work. And with that, I would like to invite Pastor Jack Andrews from the First Baptist Church of Newberry, if you would lead us in our invocation tonight, sir. And at the end of the invocation, if you would remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, we would appreciate it. Thank you, Pastor Jack.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Let's pray together. Father, in the name of Jesus, I want to thank you for the opportunity I have just to intercede and pray for our city council. Lord, I thank you for the city of Newberry. I thank you for the citizens here. I pray for your blessings over this meeting, for your blessings over Newberry, for your protection and your presence here. And God, that you would do a work in this place. We thank you for all your provisions, the gift of life, Lord, that you give us, your presence here, and we thank you for that. We just want to lift up Mr. Farnsworth tonight as he's been sick. We pray for him. Ask your hand of healing to be upon him as well tonight. Lord, bless our council. Bless our mayor. Thank you for his leadership in the city. Bless our citizens again tonight, Lord. We thank you for hearing our prayers tonight. We make these prayers in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pastor Jack. All right, we have one presentation tonight. I believe Dallas is going to lead us in this presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Commissioners. Suicide is the 10th leading cause of all deaths for Americans, the second leading cause of death for adults between the ages of 25 and 34, and the third leading cause of death in youth between 15 and 24. Each year, more than 45,000 individuals die from suicide, leaving behind their friends and family to navigate the tragedy of loss. It is estimated that 5 million people in the United States are survivors of suicide, or those who have lost someone to suicide. Suicide is devastating for family and friends and community members who are left behind, who in many cases are affected by suicide loss or left in the dark. Too often the feelings of shame and stigma prevent them from talking openly. September is National Suicide Prevention Month, a time to share resources and stories in an effort to shed light on this highly taboo and stigmatized topic and to work to end the stigma. We use this month to reach out to those affected by suicide, to raise awareness and to connect individuals with suicidal ideation to treatment services, and to remember those we've lost to suicide. It is also important to ensure that individuals, friends, and family have access to the resources they need to discuss suicide prevention. During the month of September and throughout the year, we must aim to reach out to put people in touch with relevant services that include medical and mental health providers, and to raise public awareness about the warning signs and the networks available for at-risk individuals, which are essential to continuing to lower the rates of suicide. One of the ways the City of Newberry is helping to combat this crisis is by requiring all city staff to attend mental health first aid training, which was offered to us for free by the Alachua County in partnership with Meridian. Mental health first aid training is an 8-hour course that teaches you how to identify, understand, and respond to signs of mental illnesses and substance abuse disorders. This training gives people the skills they need to reach out and potentially help and support someone who may be developing a mental health or substance use problem or is experiencing a crisis. Suicidal thoughts, much like mental health conditions, can affect anyone regardless of age, gender, or background. Suicidal thoughts, although common, should not be considered normal and often indicate a more serious issue. Experts believe that most suicidal individuals do not wish to die. They want the pain to end, and they are unable to see alternatives to their problems. Experts also know that suicidal crises tend to be brief, and when suicidal behaviors are detected earlier, lives can be saved. Family members, friends, and neighbors need to be vigilant about the risk factors for suicide, which may include advanced aging, being male, chronic health problems, chronic pain, the use of medication, changes in health status, previous suicide attempts, being unmarried, multiple losses, and having firearms in the home. Please get help immediately by contacting a mental health professional or calling 1-800-273-8255 for a referral should you witness, hear, or see anyone exhibiting one or more of the following: someone who is threatening to hurt him or herself, to kill him or herself, or talking about wanting to hurt him or herself; someone who's looking for ways to kill him or herself by seeking access to firearms, pills, and other means; someone talking or writing about death, dying, or suicide when these actions are out of the norm. Seek help as soon as possible by contacting a mental health professional or calling 1-800-273-8255 for a referral should you witness, hear, or see anyone exhibiting one of the following: hopelessness, rage, uncontrolled anger, revenge, acting recklessly or engaging in risky activities without thinking, people who feel trapped, increased use of alcohol or drugs, withdrawing from friends, family, and society, anxiety, agitation, people who are unable to sleep or who are sleeping all the time, dramatic mood swings, and people who just have no reason to live or no sense of purpose in life. If you or someone you know is in an emergency, please call 911. If you are in a crisis or experiencing difficult or suicidal thoughts, call the National Suicide Hotline at 1-800-273-8255. If you're uncomfortable talking on the phone, you may also text NAMI, N-A-M-I, to 741-741 to be connected to a free trained crisis counselor on the crisis text line. There is help in the community. If you believe there is a risk for suicide, contact a professional immediately. Call a suicide crisis center, a crisis hotline, a family physician, a psychiatrist, a medical emergency room, or a community mental health center. Check in on the people you are concerned about. Listen to what they say, how they say it. Show them kindness and give them support. Not all suicides can be prevented, but we can be vigilant for the signs of the silent killer.
Thank you, Dallas. As a teacher, I can tell you that this issue is prevalent in our society. We don't spend enough time talking about it. We don't spend enough time recognizing it, pointing out the danger signs, telling people to seek out help, bringing it to our attention. And so it is an honor to read this proclamation, declaring September 2018 as Suicide Prevention Month in the city of Newberry, Florida. Whereas suicide is a significant public health issue and we can all work together to support and protect our community. In the United States, one person dies by suicide every 12 minutes, and there were almost 45,000 deaths by suicide in our country during 2016. And whereas in our country, suicide is the second leading cause of death for 15 to 24-year-olds and is the 10th leading cause of death for people of all ages. The state of Florida ranked 28th in the rate of death by suicide, and 32 people in Alachua County died by suicide in 2017. And whereas each death by suicide directly impacts numerous family members, friends, loved ones, and by extension the entire community, and whereas suicide is an issue that requires vigilant attention and preventative action, and whereas the stigma associated with mental health conditions and suicidality works against suicide prevention by discouraging persons at risk for suicide from seeking life-saving help, and further traumatize the survivors of suicide loss and people with lived experience of suicide. And whereas all individuals should be aware of the warning signs and feel empowered to seek help for themselves, loved ones, coworkers, friends, and no single suicide prevention effort will be sufficient for all communities, everyone is asked to join together and take a stand to prevent suicide. And whereas the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline provides immediate assistance for all Americans at 1-800-273-TALK, And whereas organizations such as the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention envision a world without suicide and are dedicated to saving lives and bringing hope to those affected by suicide through research, education, advocacy, and resources for those who have lost or struggled, and urge that we, 1, recognize suicide as a preventable national and state public health problem and declare suicide prevention to be a priority. 2, acknowledge that no single suicide prevention program or effort will be appropriate for all populations or communities. 3, encourage initiatives based on the goals contained in the National Strategy for Suicide Prevention. 4, promote awareness that there is no single cause for suicide and that suicide most often occurs when stressors exceed current coping abilities of someone suffering from a mental health condition. And 5, develop and implement strategies to increase access to quality mental health, substance abuse, and suicide prevention services. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Jordan Marlowe, Mayor of the City of Newberry, do hereby proclaim the month of September designated as Suicide Prevention Month. Be it further resolved that I call upon citizens, government agencies, organizations, healthcare providers, and research institutions to raise awareness of the mental health resources and support services available in our community and encourage all those in need to seek the care and treatment necessary for a long and healthy life. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand this 10th day of September 2018 and attested by the clerk of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, Ms. Judy Rice. Let it now be resolved.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, folks, we have now time for our meeting for 2-minute public announcements. These are time to let us know you're having a garage sale, something going on. At the end of the meeting, you'll get a 5-minute block of time to make a longer statement if you so choose, but if anybody has an announcement, now is the time. You can come on down to the mic. Don't forget to introduce yourself to us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for your time. I am Marlon Day, Library Manager of the Newberry Branch Library, Alachua County Library District. We have a couple of things I'd like to bring to your attention. First, next Tuesday, September the 18th at 6 p.m., we have a professional ghostwriter who will tell us stories about his profession. He doesn't write about ghosts. He writes anonymously, and other people take credit for it. It's a fascinating program, and I'm interested to hear some of the things that he will have to say. On September 27th, at the end of this month, we have a Banned Books Readers Theater program at 6 p.m. to celebrate Banned Books Weeks, which is September 25th through October the 2nd. And that's going to be Thursday, September 27th at 6 p.m.
Do you expect to have a lot of protesters at that event?
It will be.
It's going to be controversial.
Yeah, it'll be controversial.
Celebrating
That's right.
banned books.
We had our first
My
rehearsal.
wife will be there for sure.
First rehearsal today, and they were just giggling out of control. It was very fun. But local teens will be reading from books that have been banned or challenged over the years. Today's rehearsal, we were practicing with Harry Potter. And our two previous Readers Theaters were huge successes. A couple of years ago, we had a Shakespeare Readers Theater, and this past February, we had our Black History Month Readers Theater, and both of those were huge successes. You can watch those on our Facebook page, and I think it'll be a real fun night out for those who attend. Lastly, the deadline to apply for the fall high school internship is this Friday, September the 14th. Happy to say I do have one application, so we'll have at least one intern this semester. And
how many can you hire?
We can hire as many as I want, but 3 would be about the most I'd want to get in. But we've never had an application and somebody interviewed that wanted to intern that didn't get an internship, whether they at our branch or Archer or one of the other branches in the district.
Okay. September 14th. All right.
September 14th.
Awesome.
Okay. I'd ask that you just share these items with your constituents and those who are interested.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate it. Miss Peggy, you got anything for us tonight?
Not tonight.
Not tonight. Okay. Any other public? Come on down.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Jessica Mrozinski Baker. I am here as a member of the board of Ten Can. Tomorrow on September 11th, Ten Can will be having their annual fundraiser banquet. A Patriots Revival is going to be held from 5 o'clock until 9 o'clock at Trinity United Methodist in Gainesville on Northwest 53rd Avenue. It will be catered by Adams Rib, and tickets are still available at tencanoutdoors.com. They're $50. You can also donate, and your donations will go to providing a ticket for military veterans, or other first responders.
Awesome. Is anybody planning on going to that event? Are you going to that? Okay. Mike,
So
are
make
you,
sure-
you out of town?
You're there
Okay.
at 5 o'clock because there will be mocktails by Celebrations Catering. And the evening will end at 8 o'clock with a concert by Phil Stacy.
All right. Matt, will you get with me before you go? Right. Any other public announcements? Hearing none, we will move on to the consent agenda minus the 2 items that were pulled out. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve consent agenda.
I have a motion from Commissioner Glanzer, a second from Commissioner Martin. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move into our public hearings and ordinances. Dallas, if you'd make your way back down. Dallas is great at making sure we follow the rules and we do everything appropriately. So tonight I will read the first hearing of fiscal year 2018-2019 millage and budgets by script. So I'm going to be reading for the next few minutes, sharing that process with some folks to help me out. So, this is the introduction public hearing of City of Newberry fiscal year 2018-2019 tentative budget. City of Newberry Commission hereby convenes the public hearing on the City of Newberry's fiscal year 2018-2019 tentative millage and tentative budget as required by Florida statutes, Chapter 129 and 200, and as advertised in the Truth in Millage Trim notices. If anyone in our audience is here for the purpose of contesting their assessment, a petition for adjustment with the Value Adjustment Board should be filed no later than 5 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. The petition forms are available in the property appraiser's office. This evening, we will take a number of actions related to the adoption of millage and budgets. The final public hearing on these matters will be held on Monday, September 24th, 2018 at 7 p.m. in this same location, Newberry City Hall Commission Chambers. I encourage you, if you have not already done so, to get a copy of the agenda so you may more easily follow the proceedings this evening. Citizen comments will be taken following the overview of the proposed budget by the City Manager and Director of Finance and Administration. The City Attorney will now present an overview of the Truth in Millage legislation, followed by the City Manager and Director of Finance and Administration explanations of the tentative and rollback millage rates. City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, in 1980, the Florida Legislature adopted what is known as the Truth in Millage legislation, or TRIM, as it's called. The goal of the legislation was to ensure that the taxpayers were advised of the public hearings at which the local taxing authorities' budgets and millage rates are considered and adopted. Each year, the property appraiser completes an assessment of the value of all property and certifies to each taxing authority the taxable value of the property within its jurisdiction. Each taxing authority then notifies the property appraiser of its proposed millage rate, its rollback rate, and the date, time, and place of the public hearing to consider the proposed millage rate and proposed budget. Once the property appraiser receives the information, he then sends by first-class notice a mail to each taxpayer on the assessment roll. The notice contains the information from the taxing authorities as to the proposed millage rate and the time and place of the public hearing. The notice sent to the taxpayers is called the TRIM notice. The TRIM notice lists what taxes were for the prior year, what taxes will be for the if the proposed budget changes are made, and what the taxes will be if no budget changes are made. This information is listed for each taxing authority. The notice also lists all voted levies for debt service. The purpose of the TRIM notice is to provide taxpayers with sufficient basic information to enable them to participate in the public hearing process.
During this year's budget process, the Commission held 4 budget workshops to publicly discuss the budget for fiscal year 2019. City staff has compiled a budget with direction from the Commission given during those workshops. The budget presented before you tonight includes the following major items based upon those discussions. We were able to create a budget that has continued funding for renewal and replacement of infrastructure, continued emphasis on public safety through our fire department and law enforcement contract, and support for the city's economic development initiatives and programs. We were able to accomplish all this with no increase in the city's fire assessment rate and no change in property tax or ad valorem rate, and only minor adjustments to our utility rates, which allow us to operate self-sustaining enterprises and invest in our utility systems.
One of the requirements of the truth in millage legislation is to provide information about why the tentative millage rates are higher or lower than the rolled back millage rates. The tentative millage rate for the city of Newberry is 5.9999 mils, which is 5.24% more than the rolled back rate of 5.7014 mils. The rolled back millage rate is defined as the millage rate which, exclusive of new construction, additions to structure, deletions, and property added due to geographic boundary changes, will provide the same ad valorem tax revenue for each taxing authority as was levied during the prior year. The City of Newberry's tentative millage rate is the rate at which the City Commission has, through due study and consideration, has determined is needed to fund the municipal operations of the City of Newberry in the best interest, public health, and welfare of its citizens. The tentative millage rate is the same rate as was levied in the prior year. However, the TRIM process requires that a notice of tax increase be advertised when the current year proposed aggregate millage rate exceeds the calculated aggregate rolled back millage rate. The aggregate rolled back millage rate is calculated by dividing the prior year estimated property tax revenue by the current year taxable property value divided by 1,000. The current year taxable value does not include new construction and annex values. For the 2018 tax year, the proposed millage rate of 5.9999 is 5.24% greater than the rolled back millage rate of 5.7014, resulting in an advertising of a notice of tax increase. The total city proposed budget for fiscal year 2018-2019 is $24,555,356, which is a net increase from the amended fiscal year 18 budget of $24,407,202. This equates to a 0.6% increase, or $148,154. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments on the tentative budgets presented to you this evening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions about the budget at this time.
Okay, Commission, do you have any questions for Dallas or the city manager? Okay. I would like now to invite citizens to comment on the fiscal year 2018-2019 proposed millage rates and proposed budget. Please come forward to the podium if you wish to address the commission. We do request that each speaker try to limit his or her comments to 3 minutes. The hearings will continue until everyone who wishes to address the commission has had an opportunity to speak. This is about the millage rates. Does any resident want to speak about the millage? Okay, hearing none. I'll now close public comment section of this public hearing. Dallas?
Mr. Mayor, the document before you, included in your agenda packet, is the City of Newberry fiscal year 2018-2019 budget summary and includes the items and changes that were described earlier. Any additional adjustments to this tentative budget must be made by motion at this time.
Okay, does the commission have any questions or wish to make any adjustments to the tentative budget? Okay. Hearing none. Dallas?
Florida statutes require that the name of the taxing authority, the millage rate to be levied, the rollback rate, and the percentage increase of a rollback rate be publicly announced. Accordingly, the City of Newberry City Commission has determined that a tentative millage rate of 5.9999 mils is necessary to fund the tentative general municipal budget. The proposed millage rate represents an increase of 5.24% from the rollback rate of 5.7014 mils. However, there is no change from the previous year's adopted millage.
Mr. Mayor, I will now read Resolution 2018-32 as by its entirety. This is a resolution determining and adopting the tentative rate of taxation on real and personal property and making the annual levying of ad valorem taxes for the City of Newberry, Florida for the fiscal year 2018-2019 and providing an effective date. Whereas after due study and consideration, the City Commission of the City of Newberry has determined that it is in the best interests of its citizens to establish the tentative millage rate within the city at 5.9999 mils on each dollar of valuation of the assessment rule for the city for the fiscal year 2018-2019. And whereas the gross taxable value for operating purposes not exempt from taxation within the city of Newberry has been certified by the county property appraiser to the city as $430,451,995. Whereas pursuant to law and utilizing the rates established by the City Commission on or near August 17, 2018, the Alachua County property appraiser mailed a notice of proposed property taxes to each taxpayer listed on the current year's assessment roll. And whereas the said notice of proposed property taxes advised the recipients of a public hearing to be conducted by the City of Newberry's City Commission on this date for consideration of its tentative budget and the proposed millage rate necessary to fund said budget. Whereas the public hearing has been held as specified in the notice of proposed property taxes and in accordance with applicable law. Now therefore be it resolved by the people of the City of Newberry, Florida as follows. Section 1, that the rate of taxation and the annual levying of ad valorem taxes for the fiscal year 2018 through 2019 on property, both real and personal, as listed and assessed on the city assessment roll of property within the corporate limits of the City of Newberry, Florida for the fiscal year 2018 through 2019 is hereby made and set at 5.9999 mils on each dollar of valuation of said assessment roll. B, and the same is hereby levied for the general and ordinary purposes of the city government of the City of Newberry, Florida. The tentatively adopted millage rate is 5.24% more than the rollback rate of 5.7014. The Director of Finance and Administration is hereby directed to advertise the tentative rate of taxation and all other notices required by the state of Florida. Section 3, this resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption, adopted by an affirmative vote of a majority and a quorum present of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida at a regular meeting this 10th day of September 2018. Signature for yourself, the Honorable Jordan H. Marlowe, our mayor, attested by our city clerk, by clerk of the City Commission of the City of Newberry, Florida, Judy S. Rice, our city clerk, and approved by myself as to form and legality. The appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2018-32 as read by its entirety.
Thank you for that, Scott. Do I have that motion?
Motion to approve resolution 2018-32.
Do I have a second? I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Glanzer. Is there any questions on the dais for Dallas or the city manager? Okay, is there any questions from the public? Any citizen comments, if any? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the next resolution is the budget resolution, and this will be resolution number 2018-33. A resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida relating to the city's budget for the 2018-2019 fiscal year, providing for the tentative appropriation of funds of the City of Newberry for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019, approving a proposed general city budget, setting a public hearing date, providing for publication of notice, providing an effective date. Whereas Florida statutes section 166.241 establishes procedures and requirements for adopting and administering the municipal budget and requires that the governing board of the City of Newberry adopt a budget for the city for each fiscal year. And whereas after careful consideration and study, the proposed budget of the City of Newberry, including all items that are necessary and proper as provided by law for the fiscal year beginning October 1, 2018 and ending September 30th, 2019, the City Commission did, by motion, approve and adopt the budget for said fiscal year by this resolution. And whereas said budget contains estimates of receipts and balances, Gesundheit, brought forward as a part of the budget presentation. And whereas the City of Newberry Commission has complied with all conditions precedent to the adoption of the proposed general city budget, and whereas the City of Newbury Commission, as of this date, adopted Resolution 2018-37, approving the tentative millage to fund the proposed general city budget. And whereas the City of Newbury has determined that the 2018 through 2019 tentative budget summary for all funds of the City of Newbury attached hereto as Exhibit A summarizes all revenue and other financing sources available to the city in the amount of $14,881,970 and reserves brought forward in the amount of $9,673,386 for a total fund and other financing sources available to the city in the amount of $24,555,356 and appropriations in the amount of $13,786,754 with the reserves appropriated in the amount of $10,768,602 for total appropriations of $24,555,356. Now therefore be it resolved by the people of the City of Newbury, Florida, as follows. Section 1. The 2018-2019 tentative budget summary for the City of Newbury attached hereto as Exhibit A is hereby adopted as may have been adjusted by motion for further consideration at the public hearing established in this resolution. Section 2. A public hearing will be held to consider the final millage rates and final budget for general city purposes on Monday, the 24th day of September 2018 at 7:00 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard at the Newbury City Hall Commission Chambers, 25440 West Newbury Road, Newbury, Florida. Section 3. The Director of Finance and Administration is hereby authorized and directed to prepare and publish all necessary and required notices prior to the hearing established herein, and to provide copies of this resolution to all parties as may be required by applicable law. Section 4. All resolutions or parts of resolutions in conflict herewith are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict. Section 5. This resolution shall take effect immediately upon its adoption. Section 6. If any section, paragraph, or part of this resolution shall be declared unconstitutional or invalid, then the remainder of the resolution shall not be affected thereby, and shall remain in full force and effect. Adopted by an affirmative vote of a majority of a quorum present at the City Commission of the City of Newbury, Florida, at a special meeting this 10th day of September 2018. Signature for yourself, Honorable Jordan Marlowe, our mayor. Attested by the clerk of the City Commission of the City of Newbury, Florida, Judy S. Rice, our city clerk, and approved by myself as to form and legality. The appropriate motion is to pass resolution number 2018-33 as read by its entirety.
Do I have that motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hersom and a second from Commissioner Martin. Does the commission have any questions, comments about resolution 2018-33? Hearing none. Citizen comments? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And Dallas?
A public hearing will be held to consider the final millage rates and final budget for the general city purposes on Monday, the 24th of September, 2018 at 7:00 p.m. or as soon thereafter as the matter may be heard in the City Hall, in the Newbury City Hall Commission Chambers located at 25440 West Newbury Road, Newbury, Florida. Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners, the next three items relate to your utilities. I will first discuss the water and wastewater rate ordinances and then the electric rate ordinance. The City of Newbury establishes water and wastewater rates to generate revenue sufficient to meet its operating expenses. The staff evaluates utility rates annually during the budget process and, if warranted, recommends that rates be adjusted. Staff utilizes models for developing its water and wastewater rates to forecast customers' water consumption, wastewater generation, and anticipated expenses to determine whether rates will produce sufficient revenues to meet the expenses associated with providing water and wastewater services to our residents. Many of the city's costs to provide these services are fixed or have increased, such as personnel services, fuel, repairs, etc. Water rates have been adjusted by 2.9% in the consumption charges and $1 on the customer charge, for an average residential impact of $1.41 per resident per month. Wastewater rates have been adjusted by 1% in the consumption charge, with no change in the customer charge, for an average residential impact of 48 cents per month. Both of these rate increases keep the city's rates as some of the, if not the, lowest rates in the area. These rate increases also work towards the Commission's goal of operating self-sustaining utility enterprises. At the City Commission's budget workshop on August 2nd, 2018, City staff presented these proposed water and wastewater rate changes, and the Commission gave consensus to include those rates in the tentative budget. Customers were properly notified pursuant to Florida statutes in the August bills. Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments on the water and wastewater rates.
Does the commission have any questions or comments for Dallas on the water and wastewater rates? Okay, hearing none, City Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, and I'll read this by title only. This is an ordinance number 2018-16, an ordinance pertaining to wastewater service within the city of Newberry, amending the prior established rates and section 98-155 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Newberry, amending ordinance number 2017-29, repealing all ordinances in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-16 as read by title only.
Are we on 16 or 15?
Oh, I messed up then. I'm
Oh, yeah.
sorry.
2018-15, we caught it, so we're still good.
All right.
Okay,
Sorry about that. I'm going to read that one by title only.
Okay.
I had them reversed on my machine, so sorry about that. Ordinance number 2018-15. An ordinance pertaining to water service within the city of Newberry, amending the prior established rates and amending sections 98-154 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Newberry, amending ordinance 2017-28, repealing all ordinances in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-15 as read by title only.
okay, do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2018-15?
Motion to approve ordinance 28-15.
Okay. I have a motion from Commissioner Glanzer, a second from Commissioner Herson. Does the commission have any discussion, questions on the motion on the floor? Okay, does the public have any comments on the motion on the floor? This is the water rates, yes ma'am. She changed her mind. It's all right, we were gonna get to you there, miss. Come on down.
Thank you.
Make sure you introduce yourself, Ms. Evelyn.
Yes, I am. I want to thank y'all for being here and doing a good job here. And it's not an easy thing to do, to deal with the public. You know, I've done this I'll be 81 in January, and I've always been in the public dealing with people, and it's not easy. And but my concern is on the water. Is that something that's ruled by the city, or is this coming out of Tallahassee or somewhere else?
That's up to the city commission.
Okay. Well, my concern is I make less than $700 a month. $590 is what I make. I grew up, as y'all know, ever since I've been 10 years old, I've helped people all my life, and I want to thank y'all for what y'all did for Blessed Hope too. But I'm here, I think, for the old people because you young people make enough money that stuff like this don't hurt. But it's got so now that I cringe every time I pay a bill, wondering if my checks are going to bounce, and some have been bouncing, because my bill was, which was low compared to sometimes lately, was the water is what's killing me, and I really don't think it's fair, because I know so many people that live right down the block that doesn't have sewer. When sewer came back in, I guess probably in the 70s when I had nubbies, we jumped on it, and you know, I think we paid $8,000 for the whole block there. But there's so many people right around the corner that doesn't have sewer. you know, and I don't really think that that's fair for that to happen. I don't know how you can do it. Used to, it was a certain rate, you know, better than it is now. And it makes me want to just move away because I can't afford almost $300 light bill and water bill. And the lights I can do more about. But the water, like a couple of months ago, it was 14,000 gallons of water. I talked to Mr. New about it. I don't know what happened. It's just me and everything. Well, I have people come in, you know, and all like that. But and I got lots of yard, but I don't water the yard because we've had so much rain and everything. And it's got so that I don't even want to wash my car. I used to do that. You know, every time I turn on the spigot, I'm thinking, you know, I just don't know. Somebody said, well, don't flush your toilet during the night. And I said, I'm 81 years old. I'm used to flushing my toilet at night. You know, it's just you get so skittish about something because of old people. Like when I was working, I guess I was making like $3 and something. So when they decided my Social Security was only $590, and that's after I got a raise after the last few years, and all that. Old people cannot afford this, you know, and I don't think it's fair to be charging for washing your car and watering your flowers and it going back into the sewer, because it's not going back in the sewer. And I don't know how to even suggest that you solve it, but I just think it's really upsetting people, and I'm sorry that nobody's here to express yourself, but it's like election for the president or whatever. Everybody thinks that one person doesn't make a difference. And I'm hoping that y'all can understand that y'all are young and we're old and we just can't deal with all these high prices, you know.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, I'm sorry. I appreciate
You're fine. You don't need to apologize. And Mr. Manager, we were able to, for folks, separate out irrigation expenses so that's not going back into the sewer, but they have to get a separate meter. Is that right? Can you refresh my brain
yes,
on that process?
Mr. Mayor, we provide for irrigation meters that do not have a companion wastewater charge. It's a nominal fee, and we've I say a nominal fee. It's a couple $100s, but we finance it over a period of time for residents that want it. I think, though, that benefits folks more with irrigation systems that operate automatically. I think that the cost associated with that meter, which is simply the cost to get the meter installed, it is not cost effective for folks that do the occasional yard watering or car washing. It doesn't make sense. So if it's, Ms. McCoy indicates that she's sporadically does that type of watering, I think that her issues lie more within gaining efficiencies in the home to make sure that we don't have leaking toilets and things of that nature. And we've had met with her in the past and would be more than happy to continue to work with her. The average residential use in Newberry is about 6,000 gallons per month. If you're a single resident in a home and it's approaching 6,000 per month, we would say that there are probably indoor plumbing inefficiencies that we'd love to partner with you and try to help you resolve.
And we do offer those home audits for free. So.
Yeah, y'all came out and checked everything, and it turned out everything was okay. I mean, like $54 is my water. That's almost the same thing my electricity is, and it's just like I said, you know, you checked it and there was nothing going on. So that's not really the answer. The answer is that if I'm taking in, it says I took in 5,000 this month, but the 5,000 is not going back in through the sewer, you know, and I don't know.
Mr. Mayor, I think if there is a significant use in any resident's home that is not going back into the wastewater system, it is a candidate for an irrigation meter. I'd be happy to meet with you and discuss those needs and make sure. I mean, I'd hate to put in an irrigation meter and it costs you more, so I want to make sure that it would be cost effective for you.
Yeah, I've heard it was very expensive. Plus, that's not the answer for old people. You're putting more money on us to have that done, you know, and that's what's wrong. It's the old people that's on Social Security. We can't live, you know. It's very very depressing. I've never been so that I have to worry about what I do every day, and I'm not used to it, and it's breaking me
I
up.
understand.
You
Commissioner
know,
Martin?
so-
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would say that Ms. McCoy probably has some things that maybe we could give a little bit more personal attention to. I will tell you and I don't know where you fell, and maybe your usage issue is kind of not allowing you to take advantage of some. When we changed up the rate structure, we were specifically targeting folks like you to help. And by and large, that really has actually improved a lot of the lower end users. But I think maybe that is not getting captured for you. And I think if we can get aside with you and go and talk with you one-on-one about it, then maybe we can get you into that lower tier, and this would be a non-issue for you. Okay?
I would reiterate, the rate structure that we have was specifically designed to help elderly and low-income people, and it, by and large, in the high 90s% has cost those folks less money. So this is kind of an anomaly for you to come and tell us that you're having a problem. So I would agree with Commissioner Martin that we need to do a little bit more looking at your house, because the whole idea of that rate structure was a cheaper cost for the first 6,000 or 8,000.
The first
Cheaper.
band, first tier is up to 4,000 gallons.
4,000.
But I can understand what you're saying, but how do y'all justify charging for something that's not going back into the system?
Well, I think that's what we've got to get and figure out for your
But
instance
it's
in
not
particular.
just not for me, it's for everybody.
Right, well, for most folks, what the city manager is trying to say, for most folks that don't have irrigation systems, that wouldn't be a factor. So if you're just using it every once in a while to wash a car or something like that, it wouldn't be worthwhile to separate those two things out. So it sounds to me like, Ms. Evelyn, we need to look at your house in particular, because since we passed that rate structure, we haven't. I've actually received more compliments on the rate structure from people at the lower ends who aren't filling up pools and having irrigation systems, because they did realize a savings on that, because it's designed for folks who aren't really high consumers to save more money.
Okay.
So we'll have to get with your.
I'm
your
sorry,
your,
I don't mean to.
Yeah,
cause
well, it seems like we just
trouble.
need to help you out in particular. So I'd ask that staff to figure out how to get over there and look and see if we can figure out exactly what's going on at your house. 'Cause
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am.
I appreciate it.
Come on down.
Hi, my name is Natalie Boucher. I live in Newberry Oaks. I happen to agree completely with her, and I think I was quoted around $1,500 for a separate meter for my irrigation. And then they would put it in the ground, but I would have to connect the irrigation to it. So I may have more means than her, but I still think that's kind of outrageous, because I am paying, when I water my yard, I am paying.
I thought it was
Outrageous
200 for that
prices.
meter. Is that?
I was told a lot more than that.
It's, Mr. Mayor, it's in the $500 range.
$500 range.
It may be, she's correct in her assessment that we come out for $500, you get a meter, and you get the installation of a meter box, and our staff time to put it out there.
Okay.
We do not run a pipeline from the new meter to the irrigation system. That may be, we wouldn't offer to do that, but a plumber or someone may estimate that that's worth $1,000, and that's how she gets to $1,500.
I could be mistaken. It was about a year ago, but I don't know. I could be mistaken, but I think it was more than $500 that they quoted me when they came to my house.
Well, we'd be very happy to relook at you. It's possible that someone read the incorrect line and a usage charge, but it's a $500 range, maybe $530 charge for the installation and setup of a separate irrigation meter.
And we do prorate that out
And we
over
do.
months
We do.
to work with residents.
Okay, thank you.
But we can get back and look at that again. Any other public comments? Hearing none. Okay, we have a motion on the floor for ordinance 2018-15. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Attorney, will you take us through ordinance 2018-16?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance pertaining to wastewater service within the city of Newberry, amending the prior established rates and section 98-155 of the Code of Ordinances of the city of Newberry, amending ordinance number 2017-29, repealing all ordinances in conflict and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-16 upon its first reading by title only.
Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2018-16?
Motion to approve ordinance 2018-16.
I have a motion from Commissioner Glanzer, a second from Commissioner Coleman. Okay, does the commission have any discussion or comments on 2018-16? Does the public have any questions or comments on ordinance 2018-16? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Dallas?
Mr. Mayor and City Commissioners, the City of Newberry establishes electric rates to generate revenue sufficient to meet its operating expenses. The City of Newberry's electric rates have not been increased since at least 2009. Staff evaluates utility rates annually during the budget process and, if warranted, recommends rates be adjusted. Staff utilizes models for developing its utility rates to forecast customers' consumption, bulk power cost, and anticipated expenses to determine whether rates will produce revenues which are sufficient to meet the expenses associated with providing electric services to our residents. Many of the city's costs to provide these services are fixed or have increased. At the City Commission's budget workshop on August 2nd, 2018, the city staff presented proposed rate changes to the Commission, and the Commission gave consensus to include those rates in the tentative budget. Residential electric rates were adjusted by 1.01% in the consumption charge and $1 on the customer charge, for an average residential impact of $2 per month. Non-residential rates are proposed to be adjusted in a similar fashion. Even after these proposed rate changes, the city will offer competitive rates when compared to other utilities. Customers were properly notified in their August bills, and the city will need to file additional reports with the Public Service Commission to inform them of our proposed rate change.
Mr. Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is ordinance number 2018-17, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, pertaining to the electric utility services within the City of Newberry to amend and revise Section 98-63, subsections 1, 2, 3, and 8 of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Newberry, pertaining to the energy charge, providing for codification of the same, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-17 as read by title only upon first reading.
Do I have a motion to approve ordinance 2018-17? Okay, I have a motion from Commissioner Barden.
Second.
A second from Commissioner Herson. Does the commission have any questions or comments on ordinance 2018-17? Does the public have any questions or comments on ordinance 2018-17? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and that will now end our public budget hearing. I want to take this opportunity to thank you in particular, Dallas, the rest of the city staff, the department heads, for working us through this. I know that if you watch this at home or here with us tonight, it might have sounded a little tedious and there was a lack of questions. I guarantee you that all of the 4 public workshops, there were numerous questions, lots of comments, lots of conversation that went on at the public hearings, lots of conversations that happened between commissioners and the manager about the budget. So by the time we get to this point, I think everybody has kind of hashed it out and has had their say, but I don't want anyone to walk out feeling like we did not give this budget its due course. We've thought about every part of this at length and ad nauseum, and you probably have more than anybody, Dallas, since you wrote it. So good job to you and to you as well, Mike. Well done on everybody's behalf. And with that, we will move on to our first legislative public hearing and second reading of ordinance 2018-04. Mr. Attorney, you want to read that while Brian's making his way down?
Happy to do that, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2018-04, an ordinance of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending ordinance number 4-91 as amended, relating to an amendment to the future land use plan map of the city of Newberry, a comprehensive plan under the regular amendment procedures established in sections 163.3161 through 163.3215 of the Florida statutes, providing for a change in land use classification from Alachua County rural agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres to the city of Newberry agriculture less than or equal to 1 dwelling unit per 5 acres, and from Alachua County rural agriculture and rural commercial agriculture to the city of Newberry commercial on certain lands within the city of Newberry, Florida, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and provided an effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-04 upon its reading by title only.
Okay, we'll go ahead and entertain a motion since this is the second reading. I have that motion.
Move to approve ordinance 2018-04.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman and a second from Commissioner Martin. Brian, you want to take us through?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, as noted, this is the second reading. We've been through the annexation process. We've been through the first two steps, planning and zoning hearing, and then the commission first reading and approval on first reading of the ordinance for adoption of the future land use map change to take this from Alachua County agriculture. Mostly, there was one small property that was a business or commercial category in the county, and we're converting it to a commercial category in Newberry as well. And then following, assuming your adoption of the comprehensive plan amendment for the land use change, then also the city will adopt the rezoning ordinance to bring it from Alachua County zoning categories into the city of Newberry categories. Again, it's a number of different parcels spread throughout the area. It totaled several hundred acres. This is the one that's the small parcel that's being converted from a county rural commercial to city of Newberry commercial category over by our industrial park on State Road 45. And that concludes.
Okay, any questions for Brian on the second reading of 2018-04? Okay, does the public have any questions or comments on the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Turner, you want me to take one for you, give your voice a break, or are you good to go?
I'm good to go.
All right, will you read 2018-05 for us? Put it on the floor.
Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance of the city of Newberry, Florida, relating to the rezoning of less than 5% of the total land area of the city pursuant to an application by the city of Newberry, amending the official zoning atlas of the city of Newberry land development regulations, providing for rezoning from Alachua County Agriculture A to the city of Newberry Agriculture A, and changing the zoning from the current zoning of Alachua County Agriculture A and Business Highway BH to the city of Newberry Commercial Intensive CI on certain lands within the corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, which have been annexed thereto, providing severability, repealing all ordinances in conflict, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass ordinance 2018-05 as read by title only.
I have a motion from Commissioner Martin and a second from Commissioner Glanzer. Brian, go ahead and take us through the second reading of this.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Again, it's second reading. It's the same properties that you just brought in to the city of Newberry under future land use map categories, and now the rezoning. Again, they're all converting from existing agriculture, 1 unit per 5 acres potential, to city of Newberry, which is also 1 unit per 5 acre in agriculture, with the exception of the small, well, I back up. That tiny little triangle up there is also planned rural residential development. It was a parcel that was Dillon's Grove. Yes, sir. It was a small piece that he needed for a connector to bring his two parcels together for development. And so that actually is not agriculture to agriculture. It's agriculture to planned rural residential development on a tiny little triangle. And then the commercial parcel on State Road 45 by the industrial area. considering, even though it had a less intensive county designation for rural commercial, it's surrounded by commercial intensive and industrial. And it didn't really make sense to downzone it to that, and so our recommended zoning was commercial intensive, which allows it to develop along the same pattern as what's around it.
Okay, Commissioner Glanzer, do you have a
Can you
question?
go back one slide to that, no, next one back, yeah. There was one that, the one showed that if we annex the next property, that will be contiguous with High Springs now? Was that one that we had? That one?
That's this one here, yes.
Yeah, so that would create that continuity we've been looking for, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Brian? Does the public have any questions about the motion on the floor? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. We will move right on to the second reading of ordinance 2018-14. Mr. Attorney?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is an ordinance amending ordinance 2017-14, providing for consent for the entire corporate limits of the city of Newberry, Florida, to be included in a non-ad valorem assessment for a municipal service benefit unit created by Alachua County for the provision of solid waste management costs, providing for consent, conditions for the consent, providing that the consent is for 1 year, and providing an immediate effective date. The appropriate motion is to pass ordinance number 2018-14 upon reading by title only.
Do I have that motion?
Motion to approve ordinance 2018-14.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hersom and a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions for Dallas? Okay. Does the public have any questions for Dallas? Okay, roll call. Commissioner Coleman? Aye. Commissioner Hersom?
Aye.
Commissioner Martin? No. Commissioner Glanzer? Aye. Motion passes 3-1. And we'll move right on to our agenda items. Hope you didn't go too far, Brian. You're back up. We have a pretty exciting proposal to bring to you guys tonight. I don't want to steal Brian's thunder. I know he's going to do it with enthusiasm and lots of energy to deliver this. We've been waiting for it. I think you're going to like it.
The build-up, the anticipation. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have been looking at this for a while, and we've revisited it a couple of times. Back, I hate to say it, but towards the end of 2016, we originally presented some of this material to the Commission on development fees. We basically were looking at whether or not Newberry would be considered development friendly relative to the area communities, and how competitive we would be relative to those other communities in terms of our development fees. Basically 3 categories of fees: planning related fees, the building department fees, and the utility department fees. Just to do a brief run through, the planning fees, of course, are collected up front. It's when we sit down with the developer, we talk about their overall plan, master plan, typical things that you're going to change the future land use category perhaps from agriculture to some form of subdivision, or you're going to do a site plan review, those kind of things. It's basically they're collected to cover the costs that the city incurs for advertising and staff time. The planning fees typically on a large project, they're fairly inconsequential, or fairly small relative to the overall cost. We'll get back to that though soon. The building department fees, again, they're intended to cover the operating costs of the building department. Plan reviews and inspections are typically the majority of what the costs are. The state statutes do limit the amount that you can collect on an annual basis to roughly the amount that it costs to operate the department. It's common for cities, though, it's very, that's a moving target every year to year, and so it's common for cities in sort of lean years, low economic times where there's not a lot of building activity to run a deficit, and then in times when it's a boom time like we're experiencing now, you run a little bit of a surplus, and so the surpluses roll over from one year to the next, so that you have that cushion. So if you go into a low development time, you have a little bit of cushion there. You don't have to start laying off staff, things like that. And then utility department fees fall into 2 categories: the connection fees, which actually cover the physical connections of pipes, and things, and then the capacity fees, which are development fees that are put aside basically for future expansion of your water, wastewater facilities. These are necessary to help pay the cost of the use that future growth is going to require. In our case, it also helps cover debt service on some debt that was taken out for the last expansion that was done too. And so our current capacity fees are somewhat encumbered by our loan agreements to help pay that debt service on the expansions. And so I tried to consolidate the commissioner responses. I went back and reviewed all of the video and tried to consolidate the responses into a fairly brief summary here. As far as planning fees, although the fees typically do represent a very small portion of the overall project cost, Commission felt that waiving the fees would send a positive message to the development community that Newberry was, actively seeking new businesses or was open to new businesses, and that would be one symbol that even though it's not a whole lot of money, we want you here, and we want you to know that we want you here. We'll put our money on it. That is out of order. Oh, okay, there we go. Somehow the thing got out. Commission responses on the building department fees. There was a little bit more discussion. The building department does collect a lot more money than the planning department usually does. The primary concern was that if the city did decide to reduce the building or waive the building permit fees, it'd be limited to commercial developments only. That would provide that added incentive for new commercial development, while also, that you can easily kind of rationalize it because property tax-wise, ad valorem tax-wise, commercial properties tend to pay a higher rate, and therefore, over time, you're going to get whatever you waive, the fees, you're going to get those back in your taxes in the future anyway. And then there was some concern expressed that development needed to pay for itself, not be a burden on the taxpayers. But then it was also noted that due to the small number of commercial projects each year, the actual impact on the budget was likely to be nominal, and so that was one of the things that we did go back and look at to get an assessment of how much impact there would be. So if you look at the planning fees, we did a 12-month look back, and which we feel that the last 12 months is fairly indicative of a growth economy that we're in. Planning fees for commercial only were about $12,000. So again, not a whole lot. The building department fees, if you took all of the fees related to commercial, and this is not just the top line is new commercial construction, the remaining categories are kind of the smaller things that you run into, electrical, mechanical, and that kind of stuff. But if you total all of the commercial related building permit fees, then you come up with about $28,000.
Commissioner Glanzer.
I saw a swimming pool in the commercial permit area. Is there a commercial swimming pool?
The Newberry Town Center.
Oh, okay.
Yep. I guess that's probably, it'd be our first commercial swimming pool in town. And then the utility department fees, the connection fees, we only picked up $250, and that's fairly typical because a lot of the developers use their plumbing contractors to do the connections and don't pay the city to do it on their behalf, and so that's not atypical. But then the water development charges, $39.40, that represents, I believe, 5 water development charges with 5 connections, and then wastewater would be 4. And so the total there is about $19,000 for those, the total of those utility department fees. And so when you add that together, you come up with about $59,000 and change total development-related fees over a 12-month period, just for commercial. If you express that in a millage, then it would be 0.1455 mils, and if you spread that across the cost for all the residents, it would be average about $16.44 a year for an average household. Basically the options the commission could waive or reduce all or some of the commercial development fees. You could do a reduction or a waiver based on certain performance criteria. We'll talk about that again as well. And then leave the commercial development fees unchanged. Some issues for the Commission's consideration if you decide to waive or reduce the fees. And consider offering reductions or waivers for new construction and expansions only. Again, the rationale being that that's what's going to overall increase the tax base. However, the same argument for existing business, if you're trying to help existing business, could be made for all of those other fees as well, that it helps local business. So open to that as well. Tying the fee reductions in waivers to performance criteria, like you said, if we want the development to develop to a particular style, like our code calls for the Florida vernacular style, and it's usually adding those types of architectural design features are a little bit more expensive, and this would be a way to give some of that money back to the developer as a reward for designing something that meets that standard. Same with our code in a lot of areas allows for a steel building, and it doesn't require them to put a fascia, or excuse me, a facade on a brick or stone, dress up the facade, and this would be a way to encourage that. If you do your development to your building to a little bit higher standard, you get that. Basically you're going to not only get the money back, probably a little bit more even. Think about collecting the current development fees at application and then rebating the fees back at the time of completion. We actually think it's kind of important for a number of reasons, but especially when you get to the development fees, because those development fees are actually encumbered and we have to put them in the account. Collecting it up front and then rebating the money back from a different fund actually is a cleaner and easier process to do that. Projects with high equivalent residential unit, there's some examples you could look at. For instance, a laundromat. The ERUs for a laundromat is actually 1.1, and it's charged on every single machine. And so if you came up with a policy where we were going to reduce all of, or waive the development fees for all of the capacity charges for water and wastewater, we might want to consider some exceptions to that, like a laundromat. If a laundromat's going to be putting in 25 units or 50 units, that's a pretty substantial amount of capacity development charges we'd be waiving. And so again, just something to think about. And then I would recommend authorizing them annually by resolution. You could either roll the existing resolution over or make some tweaks to the resolution depending on the will of the Commission. And then sunsetting the program just to put a timeline out there. If it's working, you of course reauthorize it or amend it and reauthorize it. But putting a little bit of a limit on there, because if it's successful, then of course we're going to have more and more and more commercial, and at some point you might reach a point where you say, you know what, we can kind of slide back into the collections we were doing, or to pay the cost of staffing up, because at some point you'd have to reach a point where you'd need some additional revenue to staff up to handle all the volume that we hope to get. And so again, looking at the different fees, if you break the millage rates down, some of your options, you could actually raise the millage rate by these fractional amounts to cover the cost for either the planning, building, or utilities. Alternative funding methods would be increasing the fees on the residential development. Probably not a very popular alternative, not one staff
You're going to like
advocates.
the next slide, though.
And
He's going
then-
to get through this slide, and the next slide you're going to enjoy.
And staff's not advocating raising the millage rate either, by the way. That's not our recommendation. Or draw from the general fund reserves, which brings us to the recommendation would be to create some kind of a tiered system where you could do a blanket waiver of the first $10,000 in fees, which that'll be a fairly decent sized project. And then for larger projects over and above that, say from $10,000 to $50,000, you'd waive 50% of the fees. So they could get a total, whereas we would have collected $50,000, now we'll collect 20. They'll get a rebate of $30,000. We'll collect 50, but we'll rebate the $30,000. Fairly substantial project. Tie it somehow to design performance criteria or job creation, so that the Commission could establish a minimum number of jobs. If it creates those, then it automatically qualifies. And then to fund it, we actually recommend creating a seed fund in the first year based on the out of the reserves in the general fund. And then assuming that the commission is pleased with the results or wants to give it more time, then for years 2 and beyond, it would actually be a budgeted line item. It would be an economic development incentive line item that we could continue to offer into the future.
All right, let's, before you can you go back, before you leave that one, let's just make sure we understand. The actual staff proposal taken from all of your comments about this is to take $50,000 out of general reserves, put it in a separate account as seed money. Somebody comes and they want to do something, they want to build a commercial building that's going to bring in jobs, or they're willing to design it to nice standards, they get $10,000 is reduced. So if you had a $50,000 project that would have cost you $50,000, it will actually only cost you $20,000 to do that. So that's $30,000 reduction in the fees overall. That would be rebated, they get it back. Now, before we came tonight, we sat down with one of our larger developers in Newberry and showed this proposal to him and asked, would this be in the vein of the utility deposit return policy that you guys approved about 2 years ago, and has become, has put Newberry on the map for forward thinking, out of the box thinking. And that's what we really wanted to achieve here tonight, was what can we do to spur commercial growth that's actually going to matter. If you guys remember, some of you were here, we actually tried an incentive program about 4 years ago. Didn't have a lot of takers on the program. And he said this was a great step in the right direction. So hopefully, you know, we could try something like this for a year, see what happens from it, and then if it's working, we could move it forward. If it's not, we could tweak it, try it again. But I want to make sure we understand kind of the proposal here, because we had a lot of background information, the history of how we got here. But this right here is staff's recommendation on how we can move forward. This is what we pitched to the developer, and this is what got a stamp of approval. So any questions on the proposal?
The developer liked it. And there's no millage rate increase to this?
No millage rate increase. All of that was just showing sort of comparisons and
Okay.
juxtapositions. But nobody's recommending no millage rate, not charging any of the residents. We're to test the waters. We take $50,000 out of the reserves as an experiment. Is this going to bring some commercial development that would obviously, I think we've all believe, if it happens, pays that money back in dividends over the years. Commissioner Coleman.
Aren't we already lower than most of our other cities when it comes to fees? I'm going to direct that to Mike.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Generally, when we evaluate other people's fees in building, planning, or utility charges, we tend to be lowest or one of the lowest. However, to the mayor's point, this commission has always given direction that you'd like to be innovative and kind of forward thinking in terms of programs that are unique. That's why we worked on this. We had understood in years past that maybe the gives appeared to be token, and so we were looking for something that was meaningful. I think that a development that's going to have $50,000 in development fees, that the end result is they pay $20,000 in development fees and save $30,000. I classify that as meaningful, but not scary in the way that it's potentially a budget record. If this program works, you know, we are not recommending an increase in millage or any of those things. But if this program is successful, the commission may elect to carry it forward, at which time we probably would program it into our budget, and we can just continue to seed it out of general fund reserves, knowing that, you know, that is a source that needs to be replenished. But I think that you know, we enthusiastically support a move like this as a way to get recognition. While our fees are the lowest, our economic development rates or our commercial development rates aren't the highest. There's still some lingering doubt when it comes to commercial development in Newberry.
Commissioner Martin.
There's a lot I would probably want to digest a little bit here. I don't necessarily want to make a go or no-go decision tonight, but I did have a couple of questions that'll help me in my thinking about it. I've kind of always subscribed to a thought that, on balance, residential growth costs the city in services greater than what's actually received in taxes. So I'm taking that into this thought process. Brian, can you tell us what kind of even numbers or people we're talking about that this could actually impact as far as a large development? And kind of along that same line is, if it's a big development, and to the manager's point of $30,000 isn't anything to sneeze at, but I mean, how much is that an impact on like the per house or the per square foot? Can you talk me through some of that stuff and help me out there?
Mr. Mayor, if we go back and we look at this slide here, if we look at the current previous 12 months as an example, that $59,000, if we were to look at that as a millage rate or an increase, it would equate to about $16 a year. However, if we take it out of funds that we've already collected in terms of the general fund reserve, at least for the first year, then it's not going to have that impact. We're not, would not advocate a raise in the taxes. But if you were to eliminate all the commercial fees and spread it out over the entire community, it would be roughly $16 a year equivalent in the tax base.
Okay. Let me clarify a little bit.
Okay.
If a developer came to us and said, I wanted to do this, to get into the range where their fees are going to be $50,000, that they'll be saving $30,000, how many home sites are we going to be talking about? I want to translate that to a pro rata basis. If it's $10 a house that they're building or 10 cents a commercial square foot, gotcha. How big's the basket here?
Mr. Mayor, actually, just to clarify, none of this would pertain to residential development in any way. It's strictly commercial development.
Clarification.
And so, for instance, Mr. Norfleet's buildings at the Newberry Town Center or the Seaver development over on Newark, those would be the types of projects that would benefit. Potentially, if you're expanding or again, it would be just up to the commission to decide what the parameters are, but you could have a building that's been sitting vacant for a long time and they come in and they gut it. The commission might decide under certain criteria that would qualify because you're going to reestablish a business and they're going to increase the value of the property.
Okay. Well, that gets me a little bit.
I think the manager has some thoughts on that too.
Mr. Mayor, to Commissioner Martin's question, in my not very tenured research of this, so there's a caveat there. Those fees, building and development fees, typically total, is not a direct correlation, but total maybe 2 to 6% of the project total.
Okay.
So if someone's racking up a $50,000 bill, then we may be looking at something that's a $1 million to $2 million investment in property infrastructure. Taxable, that would go on the books as taxable, and then we would realize that increase in ad valorem revenues at some point in the future.
Well, that gets me a little more over the target, but let me ask you another question, and I don't mean to be a moving goalpost either, but are we talking about things that these people even care about at this point? From your feedback, do they care about a $10,000 development fee? Because I know there's things about political stability that they care about, barriers to entry that they care about, the ease of doing business with us that they care about, and I guess it'll help me to kind of figure out what is really the order of priority there, and if it's low, small potatoes for them, then maybe we need to.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I think Commissioner Martin has hit a lot of the points, and each developer is going to be a little bit different into what they respond to. There are some that we've talked to that just knowing that Newberry wants them and has embraced them coming to the community is what they wanted to hear and was all it took to bring them here. Others, it's like you mentioned, the ease of working with our staff and departments as opposed to, say, the county or other communities. And then others are strictly dollars and cents, and if they're evaluating 3 locations that are roughly equal in their minds, and one of them is going to offer them an economic incentive that the others don't have available, they're going to go to that area. And so having sort of a broad, you're absolutely right that the environment we set is important to probably all developers. To know that the city of Newberry actively wants their business is probably number one. But they're within the development community. If you're looking to guide the decision-making process of, and granted, a really large development, probably not going to necessarily move the needle for that because they're all at such a scale that this is a very small amount. But it does send that signal still. This is a community that's out there actively trying to get these businesses, actively wants those businesses in the community. And so for the smaller, small to mid-sized businesses, it probably makes a lot more of a difference. I can think of a couple of them that are active they're being constructed right now that it would have made a big difference. And
to Commissioner Martin's question, that was specifically why we sat down with a developer before we brought it to you to find out, is this enough to move the needle? And I think, the initiative, the economic plan initiative that we did 4 years ago was much, much smaller. It was basically waiving internal fees, and it wasn't enough. I think we had 3 or 4 businesses that took advantage of that. I think this one is sort of geared at that next tier business. It's not going to bring a Publix, a Walmart, that kind of thing. They don't, $30,000 to them is nothing. It's not going to make the decision. But there's that mid-range industry where this could be a pretty big incentive, and that was what the developer told us was this would be enough to get the attention, and it sends a very clear signal that Newberry's not paying lip service to commercial development and attracting commercial development. They're actually putting some skin in the game.
Mr. Mayor, I think this would, we've been trying to build that economic development toolbox, and I think this would be a really great tool to add to it. We've got the economic development tax abatement opportunity for targeted industries. We've already, we're like the lead community to waive the deposit requirements for utilities. And this would be just another really effective tool, I think, and on multiple fronts. It is hard money for those small to mid-sized businesses that makes a big difference, but it also sends that message out there. And so, I think this could generate some pretty substantial positive publicity in terms of economic development for Newberry. That we're not just a little community that gives lip service, but we're the community that actually backs it up with hard incentives.
Commissioner Martin, will you conclude? Commissioner Coleman?
Mr. Mayor, what are we looking at when it comes to like mixed-use properties where you have a commercial and residential? I guess you're going to,
this would only pertain to commercial.
Good.
This would only pertain to commercial.
So, I know we're already low. I don't want to give the farm away on this. We're already low. So I'm like Commissioner Martin. I need to look it over, but it does. You can see where it can help.
Commissioner Herson?
Yeah, I like the ideas that are being presented here. I have one question. This all looks good, but what can go wrong with these scenarios?
Crystal ball. Well, and one of the reasons why we specifically did not include residential here is because we have no problem getting residential. We got lots of residential. It's the commercial aspect that we've heard this board say we really wish we could light a spark somewhere. So I'm not sure I'm willing to tackle the what could go wrong. Maybe Mike has a.
Well, we intend to have a parachute in the program that says that at any point the commission can pull the plug on this. It's not 20 years and your hands are tied. You know, we could get 6 months in and we report to you and you say pull the plug. We could get 6 months in and we report to you and you say that has worked really well. Let's up the limits, have a more meaningful impact. So you know, as staff was working on this, we were kind of balancing two things. It's got to be meaningful because what's been presented in the past didn't seem to be meaningful for the development community. Staff initially thought it was, and I presume the commission did as well, but it didn't seem to be meaningful. So we looked around at what other communities were doing and saw that this was a magnitude that previously had kind of seemed out of reach for us. But then we looked hard at it and realized that we can have an off-ramp and the commission can just say, enough, uncle, this could go wrong, or we don't like where this is going. And we've got a $50,000 investment because that's what our seed money is to begin with. However, we've got some nice non-residential development coming online as a result of that. And it was a good program, or it didn't work as well as we thought it did.
Commissioner Glazer? I'm sorry, Commissioner Herzog, does that conclude your questions?
Yeah, I think some performance criteria in there would be good in terms of, you know, I hadn't thought about just the appearance, but more the generation of future revenue or jobs, I think should potentially be tied to that. And I think the idea of opening this to some existing commercial development or businesses that are already in place, you know, let's make sure that we show appreciation to those who are already here too. Certainly new money is great, but let's make sure we keep who we've got here already also.
Commissioner Glazer?
Well, and we've been giving lip service to wanting Publix and hotels and growth and development so that we can raise our commercial footprint. And so here's our opportunity to do that. And if we have a chance to pull the plug in a year, as Manager News said, we really have a small risk, in my opinion. And so I would be in favor of it as far as we can, as long as we can pull the plug when it's time.
I guess, Mr. Mayor, my only thoughts on worst case scenario or what could go wrong would be if it was actually substantially more successful than we even anticipate, and all of a sudden we've got 5 or 6 businesses lined up and they're all putting down a couple $1 million on projects, and all of a sudden, but then we've got several projects with a couple $1 million that we didn't have before that are going to be there for the long term and generate tax revenue over time and jobs.
I agree. I think that's the worst case, is that it works, and so many people come that we don't have the staff time, and we have to make some decisions and juggle. But that's, in my mind, that's probably a challenge that we would like to have and like to face and see if we can overcome. You know, if nothing happens, then nothing happens. You know, any further questions on the dais? Public questions. Our comments.
Naeem Merchant, Newberry citizen. I am, man, 2 minutes, really? You hate me that bad? I know builders as well. Yes, there's this one main builder in Newberry, whoop-de-doo. He creates really nice houses, by the way, but as far as commercial, really hasn't done much. The builders I've talked to said, you didn't hear this from me, but I'm going to tell you straight up, don't you dare lower what you charge us. And the reason being is because now, if we do that, they're going to expect that constantly. We already have the lowest prices, or one of the lowest prices. That's obviously not doing a trick. It's like throwing money at a problem, and it's not fixing the issue. This is like the reverse of that. Let's take away money and see if it fixes the issue. That's not the issue. What needs to happen is an investment into Newberry. I believe that instead of trying to reduce the money here, an investment maybe into a former commissioner once had was fiber for the technology that's growing and booming. There's a reason Toys R Us is out of business and Amazon is one of the most profitable companies out there. There's a reason why storefronts are slowly fading away and online is going crazy. There's a reason why Celebration Point took off with Infotech. If we invest in our city technology-wise, we wouldn't have this conversation of, oh, let's try to reduce fees. I understand it's a shotgun mentality where we're just trying to shoot and see what sticks out there with a big net. But if we already done this with lower fees, why are we continuously beating a dead horse when we know this is not going to work? But we went off of what one builder said. Of course, one builder's excited about it because he's going to get a discount on it. But what about everybody else? What about all the other builders? They're going to get upset that they didn't get a discount. They're going to get upset that they didn't qualify in enough time. So why don't you give something else? Give them technology. Give them the fiber. Give them the internet. Give them what they really want. Bring them out here. Attract them that way. Reducing a fee. Shoot, if I wanted to reduce a fee, I go live in the slums of Miami. I mean, but I didn't do that. You know, I paid a nominal fee for my house. Yeah, it was a little cheaper than Gainesville, but it's a nicer community. I love living in Newberry, and I gladly pay it again. But the fee wasn't the thing that attracted me. I'll tell you right now, the reason I live in that village, in that small little 1,500 square foot house, I got 1 gigabit speed internet from AT&T. Pay $80 a month, and I have 1,024 megs per second. Cox was only giving me 100 for about the same price. That's what really attracted me. Nowhere else really in Gainesville unless I go to GatorNet and I don't want to live with students and I don't want to deal with Commissioner Byerly. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments from the public? Hearing none. Bring it back to the commission. What would you like to do with this? Would you like? Well, we can entertain a motion for a vote tonight. We can mull it over. We can bring it back at the next meeting for a vote. That's up to you guys. It was on the agenda, so it is available for you guys to do anything. But I've heard 2 people say they'd like more time, and generally we have been collegial in granting those wishes when people say they'd like to think about it a little bit longer.
Can I ask one more question?
Commissioner Herson?
So the one developer said this was a good step in the right direction. What else were they asking for?
Well, and you know, I want to make it clear. We did sit down with a sample developer. This is not for a developer.
Right. My question is
right.
not, but what more were developers asking for? So I'll put the S on the
yeah.
end.
I mean, I think
what
that
were they asking for?
In my perspective, what you get is always a desire for greater reductions, you know, waiving all of the fees, expanding it to other things like urban density. If you're going to have mixed use, or you're going to bring in apartments and you're going to get people to kind of cluster together instead of spreading out. So I think that the comment that this is a step in the right direction was geared towards, I'd like to see more things like this across a greater variety of policies. So that's how I took the comment. But there were 2 other people in the room, and I believe that the manager would like to address whether or not we vote on it tonight. Was that what you?
Well, Mr. Mayor, a couple things. Staff intended for this to be a presentation, discussion, and then give direction for staff about some things. I think even if we bring something back, we still don't think that we've hit the nail right on the head and that there'll still be tweaking. And so we weren't anticipating a vote, we're going to do this, just a, yeah, this looks good, or tweak it this way and move that direction. To just another point, this is not intended to be the catch-all. We should look at other things. Brian mentioned that we've got a tax abatement referendum that is in ordinance drafting mode right now that will have opportunities to benefit development in other ways. I think we have some opportunities in the utility sector, at least on the electric side, for load growth. If you're the development that either existing or new that's going to add a lot of load to our system, then we can have some good rates for you. And to Commissioner Martin's point, those intangible things are part of this mix of encouraging development, from the PowerPoint presentations to just the fresh, friendly face that when you walk in the door that says, we want to make your development work versus these are all the roadblocks to you getting to your development. I would say that we are meeting with 2 developers a month on average saying, we like the projects you do in the rest of the world. We'd like to see you do a project in Newberry. And they every time express, this never happens. And we are looking at Newberry for our next project. So there's a lot going on in this arena. This is just one tool, as Brian would say, to become more attractive. And I promise you that if we implement something that looks like this, or looks like anything, we're going to get as much mileage out of it as we can from a publicity perspective, whether it is meaningful and saves someone hundreds of thousands of dollars or not. It still saves someone potentially $30,000.
Commissioner Glanzer?
I think I said the same thing when we talked about the tax abatement that we approved. It's another thing in your toolbox. It's not going to cost us a whole lot of money. And even if we just wanted to limit it to new projects, I think at least like you say, it shows an incentive for us that we want new growth and development, and it would help greatly to have that tool in the box without costing us an arm and a leg.
Commissioner Martin, do you have another thought? Okay, so staff likes to trick me by putting things under the agenda items instead of presentation, but that's all right. I'm with you. It's okay. So I have a head nod to bring this back at the next meeting. Everybody will have more time to think about it, sleep on it, ask any more questions. Hopefully we'll have a full dais. Is that everybody's? All right, we will move right along. Thank you, Brian. Excellent job. Dallas, you are back up for Resolution 2018-36, the compensation program and salary schedule.
Just when you thought we were done with budget, 3 more items related to the budget for you tonight. The first one is the compensation program and salary schedules. The commission annually adopts a compensation plan for all city staff. We look at every position every year to make sure we're in the market for pay for our city staff. And we make adjustments. There's a strike-through underline in your backup. We also increased the salary ranges by a factor. This year the factor was 2.1%, which is the rate that was established by the state of Florida. And new in this year is the mayor and commission are included in the compensation plan.
All right. Let's see, it's a resolution. Mr. Attorney, you want to?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. This is a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, amending the prior adoption of a compensation program and salary schedules for the City of Newberry employees and elected officials, repealing all resolutions in conflict and establishing an effective date.
Do I have that motion?
I move to approve resolution 2018-36.
I have a motion from Commissioner Coleman, a second from Commissioner Glanzer. Any questions about the compensation program or salary schedule from the dais? Commissioner Martin.
I'll be voting against it, only from the aspect of the increase in the salary for commissioners, which I don't feel like I need or warrant, but that's all.
Questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying a roll call. Commissioner Coleman?
Aye.
Commissioner Hersom?
Aye.
Commissioner Martin?
No.
Commissioner Glanzer?
Aye.
Motion passes 3-1. Thank you for staying right there, Dallas. Give us the solid waste rates rundown.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this resolution is amending the fee schedule for solid waste services. As discussed in your budget workshops, our solid waste rates are not meeting expenses. This resolution increases the solid waste rate by $1 per resident per month with a corresponding increase for non-residential accounts.
Okay, Mr. Attorney.
Mr. Mayor, this is a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, approving the new fee schedule for solid waste services to replace the city's existing fee schedule, repealing all resolutions in conflict and establishing an effective date. An appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2018-37 as read by title only.
Do I have that motion?
Motion to accept Resolution 2018-37.
I have a motion from Commissioner Hersom and a second from Commissioner Coleman. Any questions for Dallas on the solid waste services? Commissioner Martin.
Mr. Manager, When we had renegotiated the contract, can you remind us what the benefit was? Obviously, we're a little too aggressive, so we got to give back $1, but we still net out in the positive for residents, correct?
Absolutely. There
And
was,
about how much was that?
it was a $5 reduction initially, so this nets it out at a $4 reduction from our previous fees.
Any other questions from the dais? Public questions?
Naeem Merchant, City of Newberry citizen. Mr. Mayor, just for clarification, I believe there's a couple commission meetings ago or budget hearings. I believe the city manager stated something into the extent of, I understand that Waste Pro is our contractor. However, if we have an issue of garbage not being picked up or an issue with recycling, whatever the case may be, do you want us, for clarification, do you want us to contact the city and Waste Pro, or do you want us to contact Waste Pro? If you can clear that up, because we had an issue recently in our neighborhood.
Mr. Manager, for
About that.
clarity's sake, could you answer the question?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, for clarity's sake, the city provides the service, and we request that all calls come to us, and we will resolve them, or we will strive to get them resolved. I think calling Waste Pro, in my experience, leads to a lot more confusion. They're dealing with 12 or 15 cities out of the same office. They all have different service contracts. So I think we are more effective at getting resolution than if a citizen calls in. We're more familiar with the contract requirements than most of their customer service reps that receive calls, so we're able to assert and make sure that the problem is resolved.
It also helps us track issues so that we can know how often we have issues.
With that being said, Mr. Mayor, I believe the issue arose on a Thursday. City's closed on a Friday, even though we do have an answering service. I do believe a couple of the residents did call the city on my request, saying the same thing as the manager said. The city takes record of it. However, our answering service told them there's nothing we can do, call Waste Pro. So I just want to know if our answering service is going to start understanding that.
We'll coach them up.
Okay.
We'll
Thank
coach them
you.
up. Yep.
I appreciate it.
Okay. Any other questions on the solid waste rates?
Just a comment, because I've done it both
Will you introduce
ways.
yourself, Ms. Peggy.
I'm sorry, Peggy Loy,
you.
citizen. I've done both methods, where I've called the city and I call Waste Pro. And quite frankly, I get much faster service when I call directly to Waste Pro. In fact, the last time I called the city, I got on some loop. It was after hours, which so oftentimes you don't know you haven't been picked up until after hours.
I think we'll work on our call service. And I would ask residents to call us and let us know so that we can track those issues. And you can always reach out to us or myself directly if you want. I'll be more than happy to help.
Once again, I'm sorry. I do agree with Ms. Peggy. The 3 individuals that did call that day and were redirected, I will compliment Waste Pro. They apologized very thoroughly and actually went and picked up on a day that they weren't scheduled. So I do feel that calling Waste Pro at that point was...
I think it depends on who you get at Waste Pro, and it depends on who you get on our answering service, the level. So that's the coaching that we need to do with our answering service to make sure that people are getting the same level of service no matter which operator we get at that point in time.
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner
Certainly, if we're telling citizens to call the city, it's because we want to track that, and so when we go into negotiation with Waste Pro the next time, we can talk about non-compliance with pickup, and then that puts us in a better bargaining position than if the information goes strictly to Waste Pro, and then they can keep that account themselves and never let us know how non-compliant they're being with our citizens.
Well, there is a point with our contract where non-compliance allows us to get out of the contract if we're just not getting that service. I don't think we're anywhere near that with Waste Pro. I think they're on the whole do a pretty good job, although I do see the complaints that come in. But, Mr. Manager, will you reach out to our call service and review with them some of the comments that have been made here tonight?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. Did we take a vote? We have not taken a vote. Thank you. Okay. Any more public comment on Resolution 2018-37? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously. All right, Dallas, take us through Resolution 2018-38.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Resolution 2018-38 is the adoption of the city's fee and fine schedule. About a year ago, the commission adopted an ordinance that provided for the adoption of a fee and fine schedule. Through this year's budget process, we went through and looked at those different options that we could adopt. Primarily, you're just codifying the recreation fees that we've charged in the past, as well as codifying some general overhead fees that we charge.
Okay, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a resolution of the City of Newberry, Florida, establishing certain fees by the creation of a schedule of fees, rates, and charges superseding the fees previously established, providing authority to the city manager, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. Appropriate motion is to pass Resolution 2018-33 as read by title only.
Do I have that motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion from Commissioner Glanger. Do I hear a second? Second. I have a second from Commissioner Herson. Are there any questions for Dallas on that schedule? Any questions from the public on the fee and fine schedule? Okay. Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion passes unanimously, and that brings us to comments. City manager.
Invoices.
No, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. We moved invoices to item E. Thank you, Ms. Judy. I appreciate it. I believe Commissioner Martin had the questions.
Yes, I had 3. Lapel pins, $1,250. Holt Steel Boundary Survey, and because the former fire chief stole from us on tree service, there was a vendor in there that I did not recognize. If you could clarify that one. Do you need me to
Start with lapel pins.
Start with lapel pins.
Yeah.
The lapel pins were an item that were requested by the commission, and we got a good discount on them. I believe we bought 1,000 of them, so we don't have to buy them for a very long time.
We have 1,000 of them?
We have 1,000 of them.
I would answer
Very
both.
fine, beautiful one.
The lapel pins have been tradition, and so we bulk up on them. So we've had them we just ran out. I think the last time we bought them was
I believe
before I was here, 5-6 years ago.
I believe Mayor Nichols was the mayor when we last bought them.
Right. It was quite some time, and we use them to hand out at different events, economic development. So we should be good to go for another 7 or 8 years on that.
Okay. The Holt Steel Boundary Survey, I was just wondering what we were.
Mr. Mayor, I think, Dallas, are you familiar with that? You want me to take it?
You know what it is.
I've lost the tree. I've lost the tree vendor one, but
Well, the Holt Steel survey had to do with our need to establish a new easement for electric utilities through Holt Steel's property. And in order to obtain that new easement, it really related to providing higher level of service to some residents that were close to Holt Steel. So part of getting that new easement was a requirement to perform a boundary survey and identify the easement in a meets and bounds document.
okay.
Commissioner, Mr. Mayor, I believe the tree is it Corehart Enterprises?
Yes, that's the one.
Mr. Mayor, that relates to the FERDAP grant at the MLK Center for the new playground and bathrooms. Corehart was picked through a quote process. Looks like we received quotes from 4 different tree services, and they came in at the lowest.
Who else put in a bid on that?
Family Tradition Tree Service, Davy, and Daughtry.
Okay.
That concludes your questions?
Yep.
Anybody else have any questions on
Thank
the
you.
invoices? Okay. Does the public have any questions on invoices?
I would like to personally thank Mayor Marlowe for the lapel pin, because I know,
You're welcome.
I think you would get mad if you didn't get one.
Yeah.
You got one?
Well, he stole my thunder. It was, it's one really big one. It's one really big one, yeah. 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 But there were going to be, if I hadn't got distracted, yeah. But don't leave tonight. Everybody stay in this room. And we'll,
Can we order like Flavor Flav style lapel pins? Like, really?
we're going to get belt buckles next. Belt buckles. Okay. Does that conclude comments on the invoices? Okay. Then we will move to city manager comments.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll be brief. Just want to remind our commission and our residents that our next charter review meeting is next Monday, September 17th at 7 p.m. in this room. That concludes my comments. Oh,
Mike.
I have one more.
Yeah.
Today is the one-year anniversary of Hurricane Irma. So if you'll remember, this time last year, we were canceling a city commission meeting and frantically trying to figure out how we were going to comply with all the budget approval requirements of the city. Irma was devastating to the state of Florida, not nearly so devastating to Newberry because we are such a no, we just got very fortunate. That concludes my comments.
I agree. And it is good to remember that. That was another wonderful moment of a tragedy, bringing the community together. Remember, Cilantro is feeding over 300 people for free out at Easton. Residents bringing blankets and games for the kids to play. So we made it through that with a little bit of luck and a lot of grace.
That's right.
On the charter review committee, can we meet
Yes.
up here? And
Yes,
we'll
sir.
have staff down there, and
Yes,
we'll
sir.
bring the charter committee members up here so we can get everybody a microphone and the
Yes, sir.
and the video. Is that it? Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Mr. Manager. Mr. Attorney?
No comments.
Thank you, sir. Madam Clerk? Thank you, ma'am. And Commissioner Coleman?
How about them Panthers? Just got the text.
Panther volleyball team.
Yeah. Our 6-0 Panthers beat Keystone in 3 sets. Well, I
They
don't
have
think
a
we
tradition of doing 3 sets and done.
I
right?
don't think we've went 4 or 5 at all this year so
Wow.
far. Yeah. So you need to start saving your money for state championship.
Yeah, we need to all make it up
All
there.
head to Orlando.
Yeah.
All right, that's it.
Commissioner Hersom? Nope. Commissioner Martin?
I wanted to express my appreciation to the Norfleet family for the invitation for us to go out to their dedication of the 10 Commandments on their town square property. I thought it was very, very well done. I also wanted to commend the citizens who actually left earlier, but it's not always easy to come here in most people's minds, but in all actuality, it should be very unintimidating at all. I think we are pretty easy to get along with and talk with. I don't want people to not come here because they feel like we're going to, give them the riot act or anything like that. I think it's very effective, and I encourage most people to do that. We can't always accommodate everybody's wishes, but hopefully they'll at least get something out of coming here. And I also wanted to thank Ultimate RV and Boat Storage. They are finally open out east of town. If you have any need for that kind of facility, please look them up. And I also just wanted to mention, a lot of times these commission meetings are strung together. It's kind of like a movie. It's not always easy to come in here in the middle and expect to be caught up. So it's good for citizens particularly. I had this conversation with somebody earlier, to just try to come directly to the commission if you have a question, and make sure you're getting the right information. I come across the repeated situations where I'm kind of reeling in bad information, or I'm clarifying rumors and things like that, and there isn't any particular catalyst that's making me say this tonight, but just kind of a reiteration of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Martin. Commissioner Glanzer?
Thank you. The vile act of the vandal who defaced the home in Newbury Oaks this weekend cannot be undone. But his or her intentions backfired completely when they chose Newbury as their place to spew their hatred. Instead of engaging Newbury in a hate war, they saw Newbury rise up to defend, love, and make reparations to the victims, and I was very proud of them. Instead of our citizens saying, "Oh, that's too bad, what happened," and turning away, they engaged in active protest of this event. They spoke out with loud voices and literally embraced these victims with overwhelming strength and love. And I just want to read a little excerpt from one of the victims that was posted. They said, "I want to mention to you that it was a pleasure meeting and working with Mayor Marlowe and Nahum. I cannot wait to pay it forward. This community has wrapped its arms around us and turned a negative experience into a loving, supporting, and especially validating opportunity to get to know just what being a Newberian is. I can't believe we didn't do a better job getting to know everyone earlier. You all are fantastic." And I want to say to Allie, thank you for your forgiving spirit and letting us embrace you. Some have said the city needs to make a stand and take action instead of just talking about it. And I want to say we have made a stand and we are taking action. For the record, there are several community awareness events that are already scheduled or in the making. Next Thursday, September 20th, is the first Truth and Reconciliation gathering organized by our city to explore a history on community and racial issues. On November 11th, there will be a meal on the grounds at my office right across the street where we will break bread with both black and white communities and will come together giving thanks for our shared heritage in Newbury. And there will be ongoing scheduled events for educating our community on tolerance. And I hope you'll participate and keep the awesome spirit of this community alive as we know it to be. So your city is not only talking about this inexcusable behavior that we've witnessed lately, we're doing something about it. And it takes everyone, not just us on the dais. We don't have to agree with each other. We just have to accept each other for who we are. The problem didn't begin with these recent incidents, and it won't stop with the actions we're taking. But by continuing to shine a light on the commonalities we have versus the differences, we'll start to see a blending of colors and lifestyles and cultures and religions, and it'll make our community a welcoming place to live, work, and play. I commit myself to this, and I encourage everyone to stay aware and be vigilant. And finally, thank you, Newbury, for restoring my faith in human kindness, for the way you rose up beyond all expectations to embrace those victimized by hatred. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Glanzer. I've got a few. I want to remind everybody that this is homecoming week. I know it seems a little early in the school year, but here we are nonetheless. Homecoming is this Friday, September 14th. The parade will start at 3 o'clock. It'll follow the same route that it has in the past few years. We'll leave the track heading east. We'll come down 255th. What's Bill's Road? 255th? 255th. We'll come back. We'll come 250th. Thank you. We'll, you're throwing me off there, Joy. That's your street. Yeah. We'll come out Newbury Road. There's about 3 really good spots. If you've got kids at Newbury Elementary School, right out in front of the elementary school is a good place to see the parade. In front of the tennis courts up and down that road, there's some nice shaded spots to sit in, obviously downtown area as well. So that parade will begin at 3. We would hope everybody to come out to Panther Prowl, which is the Thursday before. That's Thursday, September the 13th. Panther Prowl starts at 7 o'clock at night. The kids work really hard, even when we only have 4 weeks to pull it all off, to put on a good show. They really love it when the community comes out and sees their creativity, ability to make these videos and skits. They have a good time, and they're a lot of fun. And obviously, we'd love for you to come to the game. Kickoff is at 7:30. We're playing the East Side Rams. Should be a good game. They've got a quarterback who has signed already to UF, but that is no intimidation factor for the Panthers. And then obviously at the halftime show, we will crown the queen. We'll also crown the king, but nobody ever cares about him. I want to commend Commissioner Glanzer. She went down. She was, most folks don't know this about Commissioner Glanzer, but she is a Dallas cheerleader, and they had a, I'm sorry, Dallas Dolphins. Woo! That was retribution for the 250th Street. She's a Dolphins cheerleader. She went down this weekend, had a reunion. If you didn't see the pictures, they looked like they had a lot of fun. The unbeaten season. That's right. I'm sure it was the cheerleaders that year also. September 29th, we have next farm share event. It's going to be at the American Legion. We usually begin distributing the food about 9 o'clock. If you can volunteer for that event, it takes about 50 people to make that event run smoothly. Any less than that, and people really have to work hard. So if we get 50 people, everybody can have kind of a nice time. I want to appreciate the city and the commission for supporting that and helping us out. We get the cones out there and make some lanes, and it makes it work a whole lot better. So that's September 29th, which is a Saturday. We'd love for you to come and volunteer if you can. We're usually done by noon, especially if we have that many volunteers. We can get everything wrapped up and put up. I appreciate it. Jessica's been at the last 3 or 4 of them, so you've done great. Hoping that she's a September 29th there also. And then I too would like to extend an invitation next Thursday, September 20th. We're going to spend the evening having community members, residents from the city of Newberry who have studied the Newberry Six, which is one of the largest group lynchings that we have recorded in American history. And it's going to be local. We have a local author and resident who has researched that incident that's going to lay out the story for us and tell us what happened as best as we can figure out. We have a local teacher who is going to talk about this process of truth and reconciliation and what we can learn from it and benefit. We're going to record the event so that we have it for posterity. We can bring it into classrooms and use it. We have a descendant of one of the victims, a young lady that goes to Newberry High School, is going to open up the night and talk a little bit about what it means to her that we are engaging in this process. And we have a recent Newberry High graduate, not so recent anymore, probably about 4 or 5 years. He's graduated college now, but he spent some time in college studying this process and the benefits that it can bring to a community. We're going to begin that at 7 o'clock. I hope that we get a lot of residents to come out and spend the night with us and hear and learn. I know it can be an emotional topic. It can be an emotional night. I don't think that we should let that scare us away from engaging in the process. I think that it can be cathartic. And what is different about this and what is true is that we have had folks from the outside. We've had folks outside of Newberry tell us what happened. We've never yet talked about it as a community internally, and that's what we're going to try to start September 20th. I want to stress that September 20th is a first step. It's not the last. It's a beginning of a process. It's not it's not a one and done. We're not going to do one thing and then call it quits, but figuring out the story and beginning the process is an important part to it. We've got to start somewhere, and that's what we're going to do on September 20th. So we'd love to have you there. Everybody on stage will then take questions at the end of the night, and we hope that we have some folks that can open up and tell us what they've heard as they were growing up, as they were kids, and we can have some back and forth and some dialogue about that. I want to echo Commissioner Glanzer's comments about the way that this community once again came together this weekend. It was fantastic to see that we didn't allow differences separate us, that when one of us is threatened with physical harm and violence, we say, no, there's the line. We're not going to allow that to happen in our town. We had residents that showed up to repaint, strip the graffiti off to repaint it. Naeem went over this weekend to help install cameras so that the residents feel safe. And it was an outpouring of love, and I don't know why that shocks me, because that's what we always do, but we have, every time we're faced with a challenge, we rise to the challenge, and we don't let any difference prevent us from doing what's right in that moment. So we can agree to disagree respectfully, but when somebody is threatened and has that kind of hate thrown at them, we say no, and we stop. So thank you, sir, for your volunteerism, I know it meant a lot to them. I appreciate all the residents who have reached out to that family and helped them. And with that, that will conclude my comments. Public comment.
Naeem Urchin.
He can install a camera in about 30 minutes, by the way. I mean, it's lightning fast.
Thank you, but no thanks for, it is a true pleasure to help. I would like to say this, and I did mention this on the Newberry, Florida Politics page on Facebook, has no city official or anybody in the city itself is running the page. It is independent of just myself and a former commissioner. That's not on Facebook right now. I want to look at the positive of this outcome, because giving too much negative is only going to feed more negative. I just want to say that it's awesome to see a city stand behind its residents during a time of need. Good will always prevail, especially over any evil act. We are witnessing neighbors come together even when we disagree with each other's views. General Mathis says, you know, what two consenting adults do is not your business. You might disagree. It might be against your views. That's fine. But it's a beautiful thing to see that even in those disagreements, communities coming together. I want to reiterate something that I said, that this is not the way my Newberry is. That action that took place is not my Newberry. My Newberry is what stood up and said, let me paint it. Let me buy you a new door. Let me buy you dinner. Let me install your cameras. How can we make this, give them a hug. That is my Newberry. And I will put this on the record. You putting move or die, that was to me. When you attack a citizen, you attacked me. And I hope every citizen takes that stand after that day. That was a personal attack on everybody. And I take that personally. You attack my city, you attack me personally. And I don't stand for that. I will stand with Newberry United, and I thank you, Mayor, for being out there, and the commissioners for being out there. And I will say, this was a great display of good prevailing over evil, and thank you for that opportunity to serve, and I will serve again if needed.
Well, I hope we never need you in another instance like that. But it was great to have you there. I do not know how to install cameras, so I really appreciate it. Any other public comment? Hearing none, we are adjourned.